Hello, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While. It's a show in which I chat with authentic, heart-centered experts about interesting topics to spark, inspire, and motivate both personal and professional change. Today's topic is self-leadership, the path to an abundant life. And this conversation is worth your while because with a new perspective about your life, your power, and your choices, you can take small steps today that will lead you to leading an abundant life. So I am Linda Bucher. I am a transformational speaker and a trainer and a master certified life coach. I was not always living an abundant life. Matter of fact, for about 45 years, I lived the life of a chameleon, and I was hanging out in Victimville for a really long time. But finally, I discovered who I am, and I connected with my passion and my purpose, and I reinvented my life to align with my true self. And that is exactly what led me to living a very abundant life. So if that's something you totally want to do and you want to talk about it, I can tell you the exact 5 things you've got to do. And I will tell you about that. If you want to just hop on a call with me, I'm always available. You can just schedule it with me right on my website, lindabucher.com/chatwithlinda. So today I have the pleasure of being joined by Kathy Goller of Teal Horizon Coaching. Now, Kathy is also making positive ripples in the world, and she's doing it in a really beautiful, beautiful way. Kathy helps people who are stuck, who are stale, or who are starting something new to get confident about their strengths and to get clear about what matters most so they can live with purpose and make a greater impact on those that they serve. So hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Hello, Linda. I'm delighted to join you today.
I'm delighted that you're here. Our pre-conversation was so awesome, and I can't wait to, be hanging out with you on the air today. We are just like so beautifully aligned. We're on the same team. It's just so awesome. And earlier you were telling me a little story about why you have named your coaching business Teal Horizon Coaching. So I'd love if you would share that story with us.
Absolutely. It's such a funny story to me. I struggled mightily with a business name for a long, long time. And I knew I didn't want it to just be my own personal name because this work felt bigger than me. It felt like it was toward a purpose that was bigger than me. And so I engaged a branding consultant, and we were going through a whole process of designing the brand. And it came time for the ideation session about the name. And we had a group of people, some of who knew me and some who didn't. And one of the folks, one of my friends who knew me well and had worked with me as a coach jokingly said teal, because she knew, well, let's face it, teal's my favorite color. Anybody who's been with me, seen me out, seen my office, they kind of pick up on that pretty quickly. Teal is my favorite color, has been for years. But one of the folks who didn't know me so well said, well, why teal? And I had to explain, well, not only is it my favorite color, but in some of the learning that I had done as I moved into the coaching world, I learned that teal actually is the color that is used to represent sort of the level of consciousness or the worldview that humanity is actually living into in our current times. And it's a level of consciousness or this worldview that's characterized by self-leadership, wholeness, and purpose.
Mm.
And when I learned that and I got those 3 words, I just felt it in my core, because I'm like, there are no 3 words I could have chosen that more summarized the goodness that I wanted to bring into the world through my business. And so when I explained that to this person in the middle of this ideation session, he just looked at me and he said, you have to use that in the name because you just light up when you talk about that. And I have found that over and over again to be true. So Teal Horizon Coaching, the horizon, of course, is just what always calls to us, to beckons us to continue to grow, to continue to seek new horizons, and to always be learning and open. So that's the story behind the name.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm so excited to be speaking with you today. Our audience, our lifelong learners, they are people who are like, yeah, more, right? Give me more. So when we talk about today, our topic being self-leadership, which is the path to an abundant life, this is, I promise you, listeners, this is going to be so super awesome. So let's start talking about an abundant life, like just vibrating in abundance. It feels so delicious to me. And in every day, a lot of times we're just going through the day or going by road, we're doing our things we got to do, and we forget to bring in those feelings of abundance. And when we're talking about abundance, this is a unique thing for each of us, right? How you define abundance, how I define abundance, right? I think of abundance in terms of maybe some categories, right? And I'm a more kind of person, and I'm an and kind of person. So categories like abundant in love, the love in my heart, the love around me, abundant in time, abundant in freedom, abundant in ease. Basically, an abundant life to me is by taking my top 5 non-negotiable high values, and having more of that. Right? So how we each define abundance is unique to us, but when we define it, and then we can feel it. We can feel it right in the moment. We don't have to put it off and wait for later. You can feel it right now. And that is kind of like a little trick. So tell me a little bit, Kathy, about how you define abundance.
Yeah, and I just I so appreciate hearing your definition and the kind of the categories it fits in, because you're 100% right. Every person, I think, is going to define or describe their own abundant life a little bit differently. So mine would have some of the same elements as yours, but when I think of abundant life here and now, it's a life that's filled with more joy, more hope, more love, more peace. More fulfillment. I think that's another word that's really important for me. Yeah. And just that the more I feel like I am living my purpose, which by the way is helping other people live their purpose.
Right.
that for me is me being able to live part of or live deeply into that abundant life here and now.
Yeah, that is so true. So what someone could do is if they could define abundance for themselves very quickly. I love this little prompt. I'm so happy and grateful now that I am abundant in blank and blank and blank and blank and blank. And the cool thing about doing that exercise, not just the first time, but by reading it back to yourself every day, is you will feel that abundance while you're writing it. You will feel that abundance while you're reading it, because for each one of those things, you do have something in your life that exemplifies the abundance in that area. So, I lived a life that was not so easy for very, very long. But in the moment, if I would have asked myself, but what is easy? There's something that's easy. Maybe at the time I was creating a spreadsheet. I'm like, oh, that's pretty easy for me to do. But there was something that was easy. There's always something that is abundant in our lives, in the categories that are most important to us. And so bringing our awareness to what those categories are, personally for each of us, and then thinking, finding examples. How is this already true? Because if we can recognize we're in abundance right now, then we can bring even more of it to us. And it makes it more delicious, and we're more motivated to be like, okay, what else can I do to be even more abundant?
As you're saying that, it's reminding me that sometimes I think in life we can be so tempted, and it can be so easy to settle. And I feel like that is maybe, if I had to say an opposite of, kind of living with an abundance mentality, people would say it's scarcity, but I think very often it's the idea of settling. Well, I'll settle for just this little bit, or I'll settle for not having that joy, that peace, that ease, that freedom, whatever that, is abundance. Because either I think I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, I'm too afraid. And so abundance is challenging. Abundance isn't necessarily easy. I don't want it to make it sound like a life of choosing, an abundant life isn't a life of ease. I don't think that's true at all. I work hard, you work hard but it's being able to recognize what is, like you said, what are those categories of those things that are most important? I would use the term needs and values. That's something I do with my clients all the time, is a needs and values assessment. And when I can really define my unique needs, and I love how you made that connection, that our deepest needs, when they're met, that's what is truly defining abundance for each of us.
Right. Absolutely. I love that you brought up settling, and you hit the nail on the head. And I used to be like this, because I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I lived in Victimville till I was like 45 years old. That's a long time in life to be in Victimville. And the way that I describe it is okay, visually, if I were making a movie about Victimville, all right, so first of all, the camera would be showing this cracked, parched, dry earth that goes on to the horizon. And tumbleweeds are kind of going by, and everything's grayish. Everything's gray. The sky is gray. The ground is gray. Everything's gray. Tumbleweeds are gray. And you can hear this bang in the background. Bang, bang, bang. And if the camera moves to see what's banging, and it zooms in, and it's the sign that's weathered and off one of its hinges and says, "Welcome to Victorville, population 1, Linda." Right? And then the camera moves in and moves into this old gray concrete barren bunker, okay, that Linda's living in, and Linda's all dressed in gray, right? And that's what life felt like to me. Now, there were some days, just to spruce up my fancy outfit, I'd put on my fancy martyr crown. That was shiny, and I was a martyr, right? But a victim by any other name is still a victim. And so martyr, like, oh, look what I have to endure. Everybody look at me. It's still a victim. Now, what I didn't know for all those years until the transformation, and I'm like you, like when we go through this transformation, we're like, oh my God, everybody has to have this. Like, you got to have this, right? This transformation to live this much more abundant and purposeful life that you and I have gone through. That happened when I was 45. And what happened is the settling, because a victim is settling. A victim is in the barren land. You know what the whole land is? It's the land of hoping and waiting. And oh my gosh, hoping for something to change or someone to rescue us, and waiting for that to happen. It is the most powerless place that we can ever be in. And I was there for decades. It was awful. And then what happened is it's an internal switch that has to flip. Maybe today you and I can help people flip this internal switch, because none of my email marketing is going to do that. None of my posting on social media is going to flip that for somebody. But when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, when you have an inkling that even if you're not sure you're worthy, or even if you're afraid, you might just be worthy of a life that's different. That's when that switch flips. And for me, I said it out loud one day. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what life I'm meant to be living, but it's not this one. And I was so certain. Did you have a transformation like that?
I don't know for me that it was that dramatic, but I just am very aware of that hunger. I've sometimes felt in myself, I've seen in clients I would describe it as, there's got to be more to life than this.
Yeah.
I was really, I'll be honest, really blessed, very privileged in life to kind of have some early experiences in my life that set me on this path of our topic today of self-leadership and kind of the seeking of abundant life. But it's always been sort of a check and balance for me of, am I still on that path, or am I settling? Where might I need to challenge myself? When is good enough not good enough?
Oh, I love that. That's so great. That is so great. Okay, so the opposite of victimville, the opposite of powerless, right? The opposite of settling. This is where we're talking about today, because we're talking about self-leadership, which is the path to an abundant life. So let's talk about self-leadership, about this power that we do have, about this choice that we do have. And then as soon as we realize that we do have power and we do have choice, that's when that internal switch flips. And then we can start practicing exercising those.
Yes. And that's what I was thinking as you were sharing your story, and you talked about like that internal switch, or that moment where you decided. And I think for most of us, it's sometimes maybe it is one big decision to really change our lives kind of 180 degrees or start moving in a different direction. Lots of times it starts with a much smaller decision, right? It is they talk about that journey of 1,000,000 miles starts with a single step. So it's that single step. It's that one step at a time of recognizing, wait, I am not a victim here. I am the one who leads my own life.
Yeah.
That's a really big mantra for me, for myself. And one of the things I try and share with my clients of, you have a choice. We all have a choice. We are here on this earth, and we have a choice that we can just simply exist, take up space, and get carried along by the default in life, and get carried along by the circumstances of life and of the things that happen to us. Or we can make choices to live our lives. And in fact, even I would say to lead our lives. And so those choices come in, in big forms and in little forms. So yes, they are the big choices about, job and career and the significant relationships in my life, but it is the small choices too of, am I going to keep that commitment to get up and exercise this morning? I feel like that is a daily struggle that I have, a conversation I have with myself. And it's not to say that I'm a failure if I choose not to, but I recognize it's my choice. That again, I'm not the victim, that there's that exercise. I think it actually comes from Dwight Eisenhower a long time ago, called the circle of influence, or circle of control, circle of no control. And we can look at anything in our lives and try and figure out, like, if I was putting it on a map, like a bullseye, is it just something on the outer circles that I don't have any control over? I always challenge folks and challenge myself. Draw a circle closer to the inside because I'm at the center of that circle. What are the pieces of this situation that I can control, where I can make a choice? How can I choose to respond instead of just react? So that's a little bit for me of what self-leadership really means. It's making conscious, intentional choices about our life. And again, they could be really small choices, but I know in my own life, a small choice here over time, right? It changes the trajectory of a life. We were talking a little bit about vectors and exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's very beautiful. I love that we're just like all on the same page here. It's so beautiful. And you know what you just reminded me of? And it's not even on my website, but if anyone listening wants it, I would just give it away. Normally it used to be for sale on my old website, but I created this really amazing product called Power Shift, Turning Circumstance into Strength. And it is for those people who are settling, for those people who are in victimville, or for those people who are like, I know I'm settling, I just don't have the energy to do anything about it, right? But then there's other people who are unaware. Now the people who are unaware, this is not for them. But what it is, it's like 3 short videos that are like 7 minutes long each video, and 3 worksheets. And the first part is basically that whole victimville thing I was talking about. I'll kind of open with that, but then I tell like my own story of why I felt like a victim, right? Because it was all justified. When you're feeling that way, nothing seems false. Like everything you say, well, that's true, and that's true, and that's true, and that's true. And then the second part is I talk about how I made the switch and how everyone else can make this switch, this internal flip. Like what has to happen, and then what do you do next? Because it's scary to get out of victimville and become a self-leader if you don't know what it takes. Like, wait, that's unknown. I'm already afraid. Don't tell me there's something else I got to do. I'm already overwhelmed. Don't tell me there's something else I got to do. So I tell them what it takes, and it's only 2 small things. I'm not going to say what they are now. And then part 3 is actually doing it. And so if you really are willing to invest like 45 minutes of your life on yourself, you can make the transformation from victim to hero like that with this product. It's very cool, this Power Shift. So if anyone wants that, go to my website to the Contact Us form and just type in there, please send me Power Shift, and I will do that. But I'm like, oh my God, I never even put that on this new website that I just launched. So I just have it out there.
It's a great example of self-leadership. There isn't any one, self-leadership isn't any one thing. It comes in a million different forms, but it is always that idea of recognizing, no, we do not control our lives. So I really don't like motivational quotes that talk about like, you're the master of your destiny, and like they put a little too much ego, because I just recognize a bigger world beyond myself. And I know that none of us are in control everything that is going on in our lives. What we do control is how we respond to it.
Right? Absolutely. And that is a beautiful segue because we're going to talk about some small steps that people can take to move into a self-leadership role, right? So we've got maybe 4 things we'll just kind of talk through quickly. So the first one is knowledge. Listening to this podcast, right, is giving people some knowledge or giving information, right? Because if we don't have information, like we don't even recognize that we can exercise our power and our choice. So we get this knowledge, right? And something I've said to my kids since they were very little, and they would probably totally repeat this ad nauseum, is happiness is an inside job, which is that's the empowered hero place that I come from when I tell them that. And that's because I want them to understand and know that hope, it's the opposite of hoping and waiting for someone else to make you happy or take your woes away, right? So this knowledge of knowing, wait a minute, here's a truth bomb. Happiness is an inside job. So the knowledge that people can gain from me, from you, from this podcast, from the other resources that we offer to them, that is, you can't believe it's possible. You don't know you can do it until you believe it's possible, right? So just like knowledge is like happiness is an inside job. That's a new concept. Wait a minute. So that knowledge is really step one.
And to me, I would take then that leads directly into the second step, which is knowledge of myself. So knowledge you're talking about of like that it is possible, that a change in life is possible. Step two, I think, is okay, I want to go a little deeper with who I am. So self-leadership, like what does that really mean for the very, very initial building blocks is simply to understand who am I? It's self-awareness is the first real piece of self-leadership, right? So self-awareness, what are my gifts? What are my strengths? How am I wired? What is it that I can uniquely bring to the world? And I name it specifically, especially around gifts and strengths. Sure, we all have weaknesses. We all have areas we need to grow in, but I think we succeed more in life when we focus on our strengths, right? I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach. I use the Clifton Strengths Assessment all the time. Strengths is my jam. And I really believe that strengths-based approach that says we will be happier, more fulfilled in life, and we will find that more abundant life when we lean into our strengths and find ways to let go of any of those perceived weaknesses. And so even like a small step of find an assessment or talk to some really good friends or some trusted people in your life to say, hey, what are some of the gifts you see in me? So it could be a formal assessment like Clifton Strengths or the VIA Strengths, character strengths. There's so many different personality assessments out there, free and paid. If you want to use one of those, go for it. If not, ask the people in your life. Make it a social media thing. What are 3 gifts you see in me? And just wait for those truth bombs to flood your feed. Any of that can be really empowering if we're willing to let it, if we're willing to receive whatever results we get and to really sit with them and believe them. Like we can choose, again, this is self-leadership. We then have to choose to believe what we read about ourselves from that lens of strength. And if we've been living in a place of real darkness for a long time and we don't believe goodness about ourselves, that this step alone may take some time and may take some extra work, right? This may take some extra work with a therapist or a coach or, a spiritual director or a counselor or a good friend. But I think self-awareness is the key second step.
Yeah. A lot of times people are afraid to look at themselves. They're afraid to find themselves. Like it's one of the same thing with me. One of the first things I do on taking people along the path to making a splash and making a difference in the world, making these big, beautiful ripples, is to discover who they are outside of roles and responsibilities, right? The essence of themselves. And that's very scary because they're like, well, what if I don't like who I find? And I'm like, oh, I promise you, you're not going to just like who you find. You're going to love who you find. It's going to be awesome, right? So the self-awareness step is very scary. And it's also, I love that you brought up the word receiving, because when you don't believe that you're fully enough, you don't allow yourself to receive. I remember, I got to do everything for myself. I didn't believe I was worthy of receiving. That was a really big step. The step to allow myself to be vulnerable enough to receive so that I could discover how strong I am. Because it's the strength to be vulnerable. It's so crazy, but it totally is. So I love that you brought up receiving. And then, there was one more thing you brought up that I wanted to touch upon. So self-awareness, strengths. Oh, absolutely. I love focusing on what works, what you're strong in, what your gifts are, and emulating what works using the gifts and strengths that you have. Like that is the path. It's not about fixing what is broken. First of all, that pulls you into that negative perception that most people are walking around with, that I'm already not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not enough, period. So when you're working around what you got to fix, what's wrong? Oh, I got to get better in this, or I got to fix that. You're succumbing to those same neural pathways. You're just jumping right in those well-worn ruts of like, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I need to be fixed. And that is not the truth. The truth is we need to create new neural pathways that say, wow, I have gifts. I matter. I am enough. And when I give my gifts to other people, wow, that is the abundant life that I am meant to be living. Like, woo, it just blows your mind. So I
always say that when people are living or working in the strength zone, they get the 4 E's. Things, they work with ease, they find more energy, they're filled with enjoyment, and they're just living excellence. Like it ultimately leads to excellence performance. So
absolutely. That is beautiful. All right. Let's move on. Let's move on to language, because when you become self-aware, you should be like, one of the steps is to become aware of how you speak to yourself, the language you're using when you're talking about your circumstances, the language you're using when you're talking to others. So I'll let you go first.
Yeah, I always say, watch your language, right? So it's things like anytime I catch myself, I want to encourage people when I catch myself saying anything that sounds a little bit like an I can't, I try and reframe it. I say, practice the art of reframing. Let's reframe the I can't to how might I? Right? You see the shift there from just accepting victimhood, from accepting that this is out of my control, changing it to how might I, starts to ask it in a question. We get curious about it. As coaches, we love that. We love leaning into curious, right? So how might I, it starts to move it in toward, if you use those circles I talked about earlier, the circle of no control and the circle of control, or the circle of influence in the center, it immediately moves that issue, whatever it was, it more into the center to say, hey, can I change my perspective? And is there any part of this circumstance that I actually could take some action about? Another example might be from I have to I choose to, or even I get to, right? Can we reframe to say, like, what's the positive, this thing, I have to do this? Well, do you have to? Like, is someone holding you hostage and putting a gun to your head and making you do that? No. If not, then it means I'm choosing to. So why am I choosing to? And what's the benefit and the strength and the goodness I want to lean into there? And if I can't name that, then I can remind myself I get to choose not to.
Exactly.
Those are a couple examples. I know you probably have
I
tons.
love those. Yes, I always share the same type. Those I have actually given some talks around town about the language of freedom. That's what I call it. When you talked about I can't and I have to, those are shackling words. They shackle us. They are the antithesis of freedom. We want freedom in our lives, and they're the antithesis of power. They're powerless. They're powerless, freedom-sucking words. And my clients, it's hilarious. When I talk with them, I've taught them how to just rewind the tape and then reframe and restate, right? And I say tape, I know I'm old because we had cassette tapes back then. Okay. But then I watch them do it and they catch themselves and they go, oh, I have to. I mean, I choose to, right? Because being in a place of choice is a place of freedom and it's a place of power. So that's why those are very beautiful word substitutions. And I do have a few more. And these are around, instead of shackling, these are around lack, which is the opposite of abundance. Hello, absolutely. We're talking about abundance today. When you say, I want or I need, your brain is getting a signal for lack, right? I want whatever, I want, for me and you, I want more clients, right? Well, I want Noopa Loompa, remember that? It just seems like petulant and I don't have it. I don't have it and I want it, and I don't have it and I want it. And the same thing with I need, I need a nap. I don't have it. I'm in deficit. I'm in lack. So those are words we want to get right out of our vocabulary. And the substitution, if you say it out loud, you will actually feel it in your body. It feels different, is I'd love a nap. I can go, oh my God, I already feel the beauty of a nap. I can already feel it just by saying I'd love, right? I'd love to receive more clients, right? I'd love to live an abundant life. I'd love to discover who I am, my unique gifts. I'd love to be able to serve the world in an important way, even if that service is rippling only within my own family or my small community. I don't need to be Oprah and feed the world with my beautiful ripples. Who knows where they're meant to be? Because maybe someone I ripple to, right, becomes the next Oprah. Who knows? I'd love to be part of something bigger than myself. I'd love, right? So I don't want and I don't need, I'd love. Those are the most amazing. That's such an amazing word substitution, because it gets you into not just that resonance, that vibration of positivity, right? But it's also on the new neural pathways of I deserve, I am worthy of. I don't love the word deserve. That one's got a little negative connotation, but I am worthy of. Like, I'd love a nap. I am worthy of self-care, right? I am worthy. I am worthy, period. Really. I love the period after that. So that's
Awesome.
those word substitutions are just so beautiful.
And as we talk about, they're small, like they're big and they're small. They have big
Right.
impacts and they take practice, and none of us are perfect at it all the time, and that's okay. But it is just being conscious of it and raising our awareness. Again, that self-awareness of our language, watching our language, making those choices and those substitutions gets us on that path. And I think, if you don't mind, shifts us into that fourth strategy we talked about of leadership, is a language piece, is get up on the balcony. That's something I say very often to myself, and sometimes I'll invite clients up there too. And what I mean by that, and I don't know, the analogy might sound a little funky to somebody, but I imagine like myself on a dance floor, right? Whether you want to picture a formal ballroom dance or you want to picture just the club. I don't know. You picture the dance floor that is your life, right? If your life was a dance floor and you're on it, sometimes we can't always, well, really never can we ever see all the things that are going on our dance floor. We can see what's immediately around us. And so I invite myself and clients and friends to occasionally press pause and imagine a staircase or an elevator up to a balcony that overlooks that dance floor. So go up to that balcony and now look down at the dance floor of your life. And what do you see? What do you see differently from a few feet above that you couldn't see when you were in the thick of it and the music was pounding and you're kind of whipping around on the dance floor? Usually there's something different that we can see. And again, I think it ties back to self-leadership. There's some different choice we see from the balcony that we couldn't really see when we were in the thick of it. So I don't know what you think about that, but yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about
visualization is powerful, right?
It really is, because what you're really talking about is shifting a perspective. Like, that's really it. Because when you shift your perspective, you have more choices, right? You see things differently. So I'll explain to my clients a lot, what you see and what everyone else sees is through these glasses, these lens. And the lens that we're looking through is a lens of our own experiences and the lens of our own fears and insecurities and our own perception of worthiness or not having it. Okay. So it's covered in schmutz. We cannot truly see what's happening. We can only see through our own lens, right? So my job as a coach is to help you de-schmutz that lens. Like, we're going to get rid of the schmutz so that you can see more clearly, which is a perspective shift. And another way that I put it is, if I were looking out the window at my backyard, right, and my window is covered in schmutz, right, I can only see so much. But if I could go over to another window and see something a little differently, that will allow me to see through less schmutz, right? I'm at a different window. I'm not seeing it through the same way. And then I can perceive it differently. And this is like one of the keys to improving relationships in our lives, is when we see other people differently, as well as, of course, that self-awareness. We're, of course, seeing yourself differently, knowing yourself. But when you can see other people differently, when you can be up on that balcony or going to the other window or clearing off the schmutz on your own lenses, right? Then you can come from a place of compassion, right? Which feels good. And that is part of living an abundant life, is being compassionate, right? And feeling compassion instead of derision or confusion or misunderstanding or anger or aggravation or all those other things that we see through the lens of our own fears and insecurities and experiences, right? But we can move away to another place. Now we have a new perspective. Now we have a greater sense of choices that we can use to deal with, to see it differently, and then what our actions, greater choice of action. And I always like to choose compassion. That's one of my favorite actions for myself, looking down, and for the other person as well.
100%.
Yeah.
So that's the reason that is after we figured out Teal Horizon Coaching, the next task for the business was figure out the tagline. And what I chose was perspective,
Mm.
possibilities, purpose. And it's just different words than what you were saying, right? It's change my perspective, clean that schmutz, opens up new possibilities. And to me, when I then step into those possibilities is when I get closer to living my purpose.
Beautiful.
This
Beautiful.
was such a delight.
Oh my gosh, Kathy, what a wonderful conversation we have had today. I want to thank you so much for being on Conversations Worth Your While.
You are so welcome. It was really, really happy. Hey, I know you mentioned the shift, the power shift, right, that you
Yeah.
have for clients. I have another resource for folks who might be looking to take a step in self-leadership, if you don't mind me sharing.
I was just about to ask you that.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to jump the gun.
No, that's
I got
okay.
all excited. I'm like,
Yeah.
because I think one of the things that frequently gets in the way of any of us, myself included, taking those steps of self-leadership well, I'll say is life, is what I often call life overwhelm. It's a
Yeah.
heavy mental load. It's being on the hamster wheel. It is just being so overwhelmed by all the stuff that's going on around us and coming at us. And so I've got a free mini training called Overcoming Overwhelm. Now, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to take overwhelm away from you forever, because that is impossible. That is part of life. But what it will do is teach you a tool and a process to help you get back your peace of mind and your sanity in those moments when you're feeling overwhelmed. And it'll move you from being stuck and paralyzed and spiraling in that overwhelm into more peace and productivity and back on track. And it's a tool and a process that's super simple. You can use it as often as you need to. I will teach it to you in a couple short videos. So and my website is the place to find it, tealhorizoncoaching.com/overwhelm. tealhorizoncoaching.com// of course, overwhelm. It's all you got to do. It'll take you right to it.
That's beautiful. I'll make sure that link gets into the show notes so that our listeners can grab that as well. So you can grab Power Shift and then you can grab this. What did you say it was? Overcoming Overwhelm?
Yep, Overcoming Overwhelm. So,
perfect.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Because we want to do both. We want to shift into our power and we want to overcome overwhelm. And the tools that you're going to receive in both of these free resources are like, woo! So absolutely. All right. So I'll just remind everybody again, if you want Power Shift, you got to just go to my Contact Us form on my website and just send me, and you can send the form or go right to my inbox, my email, and then I will just send it to you because it's not on my website, but I will put it on there at some point, but it's not there yet. Okay. So this has been such a wonderful conversation. I am so grateful to have been here today with Kathy Goller of Teal Horizon Coaching. Once again, I'm Linda Bucher, a speaker, a trainer, master certified life coach, and I am on a mission to inspire and impact millions of people to know their worth, to share their gifts, and to deliberately create big, beautiful ripples that leave a legacy of positive change in the world. So if you're still feeling stuck or unworthy or unfulfilled or out of alignment in your life or career, I would love to talk with you, and you can schedule complimentary conversation with me. It's not a sales call. It's just like, let's just chat. And that's on my website, lindabucher.com/chat with Linda. So that's our show. So everyone, I hope you come back next week, you lovely lifelong learners, to continue to grow and live into the potential that you have and into the gifts that you're here to give. I'd like to thank Kathy Goller of Teal Horizon Coaching for being here. And until next time, just please subscribe and make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.